Julian had detonated a small bomb on social media, yet he hadn't called Alex to demand an explanation. The silence was unnerving, like a wife who had publicly eviscerated her husband's mistress but refused to even look at the man himself. It was a clear power play, a silent summons for Alex to come forward and confess his sins. With the day still young, Alex decided to drive out to his old place in Silver Lake first. Groceries were always a few dollars cheaper outside the city center, and he could stock up before heading back. He sent Julian a text, a simple inquiry about dinner preferences. The reply was instantaneous and consisted of a single word: apron. Alex let out a short laugh. It was a comfort, dealing with someone so attuned to his wavelength. A mundane question was correctly interpreted as a peace offering. Julian had immediately stated his terms for forgiveness. Alex had to wear the ridiculous, frilly apron he'd bought. Alex, of course, had no intention of doing so. He messaged back, suggesting a different option. Julian's response was an escalation. The apron, but with the foxtail. Alex countered that the tail was a gift for Julian, not him, and asked if he wanted garlic butter scallops for dinner. Julian agreed. After loading the groceries into his car, Alex drove to the one-bedroom apartment he still rented. He pulled off his baseball cap and mask, his eyes scanning the room. A prickle of unease ran down his spine. The place was too clean. The hardwood floors gleamed, and the glass coffee table reflected the afternoon light without a single smudge. He hadn't properly cleaned in months. It should have been coated in a fine layer of dust. He pushed the thought aside and went to the bathroom to pack his toiletries. His toothbrush was missing from the cup. He was certain he'd left it, since Julian kept a new one for him at his penthouse. The feeling of wrongness intensified. He walked to the bedroom and opened the closet. His breath caught in his throat. All his clothes were hung according to a meticulous color gradient, dark shirts with dark jackets. That wasn't his system. He grouped items by type, shirts with shirts, jackets with jackets. Someone had been in his apartment. The realization sent a chill through him. Just then, he heard the sound of a key in the lock. The front door swung open. "Alex, you're finally back." He returned to the living room to see a woman in her early 30s. He stared at her, confused, and asked who she was. She explained with a wide smile that she was Brenda, the daughter of his landlord, Ms. Henderson. She proudly announced that she tidied up for him while he was away. Alex was too stunned to process the situation. Seeing his expression, Brenda elaborated. She and her mother had been watching his new legal drama, and her mom mentioned he was their tenant. She hadn't believed it until people in the neighborhood social media group confirmed seeing him around. She explained that her book club, which mostly just watched celebrity shows, were all huge fans of his. She moved closer, phone ready, suggesting a selfie and a few autographs in exchange for a discount on his rent. The pieces clicked into place for Alex. He stepped back from her phone and asked how she knew he had returned. Brenda's eyes darted nervously toward the patio window. Alex followed her gaze and saw it. A small, white home security camera perched on the windowsill, its lens aimed inward. He strode to the patio, yanked the camera from its perch, and held it up. He couldn't believe he was asking the question, but he had to. Had she installed a camera in his home? Brenda stammered that he was never around, and she just wanted to know when he'd be back, insisting it wasn't for spying. Alex was so furious he could barely speak. This was the bizarre reality of becoming a public figure. He told her he was terminating the lease and demanded his security deposit back. He began stuffing his clothes indiscriminately into a duffel bag. Brenda followed him, protesting that his lease was for a full year and breaking it now would mean forfeiting the deposit. Alex turned, his voice cold, asking if she would prefer he call the police. That settled it. He had planned on leaving anyway, but he wasn't about to let $2,000 disappear because of this gross invasion of privacy. Brenda agreed to return the money, still pleading for a photo as he stormed out. It wasn't until he was back in his car, several blocks away, that the adrenaline began to fade. His publicist had been right. He couldn't be so careless anymore. He put the car in drive and sped away, the suburban streets blurring behind him, putting the whole strange episode in his rearview mirror. As his heart rate returned to normal, his phone rang through the car's Bluetooth. It was Professor Miller, his old acting coach. The professor asked about his upcoming schedule. Alex admitted he was still weighing his options, having recently turned down a major historical drama. He wasn't interested in the kind of fame that came from pandering to shippers. The problem was, good film scripts were scarce. Professor Miller then brought up the real reason for his call. He mentioned the annual national tour of the classic American play, The Corner Bar, and explained that one of the resident actors was taking a sabbatical abroad. The role of Eddie the Weasel was open, and he wondered if Alex was interested. He recalled that Alex's class had performed that very play for their senior showcase. Alex knew it intimately. He could still recite the lines from memory. The Corner Bar was a masterpiece from the 50s, a searing critique of post-war American society. Joining the tour would be an incredible opportunity to hone his craft alongside seasoned stage actors. The downside was that he would vanish from the public eye for 2 months, just as his career was gaining momentum. Then again, a little time out of the spotlight was exactly what he craved. Back at Julian's penthouse in the sky, Alex managed to prepare a lavish dinner before 6:30. The moment he set the last dish on the table, Julian walked in, punctual as always. As expected, his expression was stormy. He sat down and his first question was about the apron. Alex gestured to the plain black one he was wearing. Julian was not amused. His arms crossed over his chest, stating that Alex knew perfectly well which one he meant and that today, of all days, he should have worn it. Alex felt a surge of injustice. His publicist was the one who engineered the PR stunt, yet he was the one facing punishment at home. He told Julian to take it up with him. Julian let out a breath, his tone shifting from accusatory to patronizingly patient. He said he understood the demands of Alex's career, but Alex needed to remember who the main event was. Alex found the display of petulance almost funny, and he decided to placate him, calling him his sweet baby. That seemed to work. Julian's mood visibly lifted after a single bite of the garlic butter scallops, all his earlier displeasure melting away. It was surprisingly easy to soothe him. Later, as they were digesting on the sofa, Julian brought up business. He mentioned that a production company was developing a new reality competition for actors called Summer of Stars. Aurelian, the luxury brand, was the main sponsor, and he had already submitted Alex's name for consideration. Alex lifted his head from the couch cushion, confused why Julian would sign him up for a reality show. Julian explained that Aurelian was looking for a new brand ambassador. His initial plan was to propose Alex directly, but Alex's current level of fame wasn't quite high enough. Aurelian was a heritage brand with more prestige than any other, and its ambassadors were all A-list celebrities. Pushing Alex for the role would be a hard sell. It had to be a symbiotic relationship, not the brand serving as a stepping stone for an up-and-coming star. Alex admitted he was a long shot. Julian argued that the show was the perfect platform. Aurelian would sign the actor with the highest popularity score. Even if he didn't get the main contract, a smaller role as a friend of the brand was likely. It became clear that Julian had already mapped out a path for him. Alex asked if Summer of Stars was slated for a summer release. Julian confirmed it was and asked why. Alex explained that he had just agreed to join the tour for the Corner Bar in July and August. He described the play, and Julian nodded, summarizing the situation. Alex couldn't do the reality show. Alex confirmed it, adding that he didn't want to do it anyway. He preferred to maintain a lower profile to avoid being typecast by the public. Julian fell silent for a moment, then said he still really wanted Alex to land the Aurelian deal. Alex pointed to the list of rules they tacked to the refrigerator, reminding Julian he wasn't supposed to interfere in his career. The rules seemed to give Julian an idea. He raised a fist. Rock, paper, scissors. Alex sighed, defeated, and raised his own fist. The first 2 rounds were a draw. Before the third, Alex tried to gain an advantage, asking what Julian was going to throw. Julian said scissors. Alex declared he would throw rock, then. But unlike their last game, Julian's response was a non-committal do whatever you want. It wasn't a promise. Given Julian's personality, Alex guessed he would switch to paper. But in the end, Alex decided against the mind games and just stuck with his choice. As their hands fell, he stared at Julian's scissors against his own rock. Julian had actually thrown scissors. He let out a lazy sigh, admitting he'd let Alex win this time. A warmth spread through Alex's chest. He knew Julian's egocentric nature. This was a significant concession. He reached over and squeezed Julian's shoulder, about to offer to cook him something special the next day, when Julian spoke again. "So, does this mean you can wear the apron now?" The soft feelings vanished instantly. Alex closed his eyes and took a deep, steadying breath. He asked if this was some kind of obsession. Julian pointed out that the aprons were from last season's collection and would soon be out of style. Alex felt a vain throb in his temple as he argued that lingerie didn't exactly have expiration dates. Julian launched into a surprisingly coherent lecture on the shifting aesthetics of fashion, arguing that his tastes might change by next year. It wasn't about the clothes, Julian insisted with unnerving sincerity. It was about Alex's refusal to wear them. Alex knew he couldn't win an argument against this particular brand of logic, so he surrendered. "Fine, I'll go put it on." As he stood up, Julian's eyes lit up. "Wait, put the foxtail on too." Alex just raised his fist in response. He could have just thrown the ridiculous apron over his clothes, but he knew that would only infuriate Julian, leading to another round of placating. Better to get it over with. He took the apron and went to shower. The sound of running water filled the apartment. Julian idly scrolled through his phone when a video call from his sister, Phoebe, popped up, not wanting her to see anything inappropriate if Alex emerged at the wrong moment. He took the call out on the balcony. He asked if she wasn't busy. Phoebe, sitting in the back of a car, said she always had time for him. She'd heard about his recent investments in television and a reality show, asking if it was all to promote his Little Mermaid. Julian glanced back at the closed bathroom door and demurred, spinning a story about needing to counter the rise of local brands in the Chinese market. It was a plausible enough explanation. Phoebe changed the subject, announcing she'd accepted an offer to walk in a runway show for Vanguard, a new Chinese brand, and would be flying in soon. Julian asked if their father knew she was working for a competitor. Phoebe was dismissive, stating that her career was her own. Just then, the bathroom door opened. Julian caught a glimpse, quickly told Phoebe to send her flight information, and hung up. Alex emerged hesitantly, wearing nothing but the skimpy-made apron. It was a ridiculous confection of black lace and white frills that barely covered anything essential. Julian, now sitting on the sofa, beckoned him closer. Alex leaned against the doorframe, cheeks flushed. As he shifted, Julian noticed something else and asked if he was also wearing the foxtail. Alex mumbled an affirmative. Since he'd already conceded on the apron, he figured he might as well go all in. Julian leaned forward, a dangerous glint in his eyes. He bit back his initial impulse and simply said, "Come here." What followed was a tumble onto the sofa. Alex had to admit he enjoyed kissing Julian. There was a precision and thoroughness to it, a perfect balance of passion and control. Soon, the flimsy apron was gone, and the night dissolved into a haze of tangled limbs and feverish touches. When Alex came back to himself, dazed and breathless, he heard Julian's voice, laced with amusement, ask why he was so sensitive. A flash of irritation shot through him. What was that? All his dignity as the supposed top in this relationship had just been obliterated. Julian just laughed, capturing his mouth again to silence any protests. Sometime later, when it was all over, Alex finally found his voice, demanding to know if Julian was even trying to let him take the lead. He seriously proposed a theory that Julian had some psychological block against letting his bestie top him. Julian, with wide-eyed innocence, denied it, claiming he was only playing with the tail for fun. Alex, feeling utterly defeated, declared they should just stop trying altogether. He clearly wasn't cut out for this. A flicker of something bright crossed Julian's face as he offered to take over the role. "Shut up," Alex snapped. The game had gone too far. For the next 2 days, the quality of their meals plummeted. No matter how much Julian complained, Alex served nothing but plain rice and steamed vegetables. Fortunately, Phoebe's arrival broke the tense stalemate. As they left the parking garage at LAX, Alex was fully disguised in a cap, sunglasses, and mask. He noticed Julian had his mask pulled down to his chin and quickly yanked it back up. Him about how intense fans could be these days, recounting the story of his landlord installing a camera in his apartment. Julian adjusted his mask and nodded towards 2 people across the way, asking if they were being watched. Alex glanced over and saw 2 figures staring intently in their direction. The next moment, one of them started walking towards them. Before Alex could suggest they leave, Julian grabbed his wrist and broke into a dead sprint. "It really is Alex and Julian," the 2 fans shouted from behind. Alex was bewildered, thinking that running only confirmed their identities. After weaving through a planter and around several support columns, they lost their pursuers. Panting, Alex pulled down his mask and asked why on earth he'd run. Julian, not even out of breath, said he was giving them a taste of what it's like to be first. Alex just shook his head. Julian then explained more seriously that it was practice for when Alex eventually got mobbed at airports. Phoebe wasn't using the VIP exit, so they waited for her across the street, hidden behind a pillar. Alex had dressed them both in unassuming plaid shirts, both from his own closet, so they blended in easily. 20 minutes later, Phoebe called to say she had her luggage. Julian met her at the curb and brought her and her assistant back to their hiding spot. Phoebe greeted Alex with a warm, enthusiastic hug. "Hello," she said, her English accented but clear. "I'm Julian's mother." At nearly 6 feet tall, in heeled boots, she towered over both of them. Alex replied that he'd known of her since he was a child. As they walked to the car, Phoebe slung an arm over Alex's shoulder, confiding that he was the first boyfriend Julian had ever introduced her to. Alex thought to himself that was probably because there were no strings attached. They could always just be friends if things didn't work out. She asked about his recent TV show, and Alex confirmed he was on a break. He offered to show her around the city if she liked. She waved a hand, telling him to drop the formal ma'am and call her Phoebe. He glanced at Julian, who gave him a subtle nod of encouragement. Phoebe then mentioned that what she really wanted was a home-cooked meal, saying she felt so lucky to have such a talented daughter-in-law. Alex stopped in his tracks. Daughter-in-law? Julian quickly stepped in, putting a hand on Alex's back and guiding him forward, explaining that his mother's English wasn't perfect. Phoebe, who had grown up speaking it, shot him a look of pure confusion. In the car, with Alex driving and the assistant in the passenger seat, an awkward silence fell over the back where Julian and Phoebe sat. Just as Alex turned on the radio, Julian's phone buzzed. It was a message from Phoebe. Son-in-law? Julian ignored it. Phoebe then leaned forward as if to speak to Alex directly. Alarmed, Julian quickly grabbed his phone and typed a reply. Your son is too beautiful. He hasn't figured out I'm a top. Phoebe squinted at her phone, then typed back. Are you two actually together or not? Julian replied that he thought they were, but Alex was still trying to get there, which was practically the same thing. Phoebe rolled her eyes and asked the most practical question. So how do you handle the top/bottom situation? Julian coolly replied that they would figure it out. Phoebe warned him that she hated liars and he should be honest with Alex soon. Later that week, the Vanguard event was not a runway show but a lavish appreciation dinner for their VIP clients. The dress code was formal. Julian wore a sleek tuxedo with a black bow tie. Alex wore a tailcoat with a white one. Standing before the mirror, they were a striking pair. Julian insisted on taking several photos before they left in his flashy Ferrari, which immediately attracted a swarm of paparazzi. It was the first time they had attended a public event together in the US, and Alex could already imagine the frenzy in their online fan forums. Inside, they found their table, and almost immediately, several wealthy young women approached, asking for photos with Alex. One was live streaming, gushing about his character in the new show. They were all far more respectful than his landlord's daughter, keeping a polite distance. When the pre-dinner fashion presentation began, they returned to their seats. Julian leaned over, feigning disappointment that no one had asked for his picture. Alex reminded him they had all said hello. Julian shrugged, complaining he felt like a background accessory who would be cropped out of the photos. Alex laughed, asking if the great beauty was feeling insecure. No, Julian said, turning to him, his expression serious. Seeing you being admired makes me happy. A sudden roar from the crowd drew their attention to the stage. Phoebe was making a surprise appearance, the final model in the show. Dressed in a stunning deep V gown, the legendary supermodel commanded the stage with a powerful, confident stride that was a world away from the waifish models of today. Alex found himself standing and applauding with the rest of the room. He turned to Julian and said, I really envy you. The gala quickly became a trending topic online. Alex saw his and Julian's names on the trending lists. But the big news of the night came from another source. Summer of Stars, the reality show, had been building hype for weeks. Just as Alex's character was trending from the latest episode of his drama, his rival, Liam, posted an official announcement that he was joining the cast of the reality show. The news immediately overshadowed everything else. The fan bases of Liam and Alex's ex, Jason, instantly erupted into a war over which actor was the bigger star. Alex, bored, opened Julian's social media. Julian had posted one of their selfies from earlier, and the comments were full of fans celebrating that Alex had met his mother-in-law. But the top comment wasn't the one with the most likes. It had been pushed up by hundreds of replies. A user named Lost in the Sauce had written, J. Enterprises is their registered company. J stands for Julian. That's the real ship, you've all got it backwards. The replies were a battlefield. Some told the heretic to get lost, but others had looked up the public business records and confirmed it was true. The comment was sowing chaos. Alex showed the phone to Julian, suggesting it was a troll from Liam or Jason's camp. Julian just glanced at his own phone. Oh, they found out about Jay.
Enter please.
He then opened his messages and sent a single word to a contact. Continue. Alex decided to check their main fan forum, but just then, a notification popped up. It was a message from Chris, his co-star. I just realized, why is your ship name Alex Julian? Isn't Julian the top? Shouldn't the one be on the left? Or am I remembering it wrong? The smile froze on Alex's face. His fingers hovered over the screen. He suddenly recalled Julian's inexplicable hostility towards Chris, and the feeling that he was missing something crucial resurfaced. Phoebe's daughter-in-law comment echoed in his ears. He deleted the reply he was typing and wrote back, "How can you tell he's a one?" Chris's reply came instantly, "Dude, it's obvious just looking at him." The noise of the gala faded away. Alex's heart sank. Looking back, it felt like staring at an optical illusion. For months, he had seen only the goblet in the center of the image. Now, someone had pointed out that the negative space formed two faces in profile, and suddenly he couldn't see the goblet anymore. All the clues clicked into place. The way Julian always overpowered him in kisses, his obsession with the foxtail, his absolute refusal to let Alex touch him in certain ways. And the most fundamental fact he'd chosen to ignore, Julian was physically larger than him. He thought of all the times Julian had acted protectively, had stood up for him, had called him wifey in front of Jason. He had dismissed it all as part of their bestie dynamic. But if Julian wasn't his bestie, then all those times he'd wandered around the apartment in just his underwear, let Julian crawl into his bed, agreed to be his practice boyfriend, it wasn't camaraderie. It was a free-for-all. He had been served up on a silver platter. Alex gripped his phone, a fire burning in his gut. He wanted to demand the truth right there, but he knew Julian would just lie again, just as he had on New Year's Eve. He needed a better plan. He had to be smarter. Julian must have sensed his intense stare, turning to ask what was wrong. Alex summoned his best performance and smiled, saying it was nothing. During dessert, while Julian and Phoebe were networking, Alex stayed at the table, eating a fluffy souffle and doing some online digging. He found no trace of any of Julian's exes. So he changed tactics, going back to the social media comment that started it all. He opened the profile of Lost in the Sauce. The user's location was local. Their posts were mundane, observations about the weather, movie reviews. It wasn't a fan account. Scrolling further, he saw the user had liked the cover of every issue of Verve magazine, the company Julian ran. The truth dawned on him, this wasn't a troll. It was one of Julian's own employees, acting on his orders. He put his phone away and watched Julian across the room, tall and impeccably poised. How had he ever mistaken him for a bottom? The spoon scraped loudly against the bottom of the empty ceramic bowl. "Ready to go?" Julian asked, returning with a glass of champagne. Though his mind was reeling, Alex calmly wiped his mouth and agreed. They dropped Phoebe at her hotel. In the elevator, she drunkenly told Julian they were a perfect match and that he should confess everything to Alex before he scared him away. "Don't worry," Julian said with a wave. "I have my own rhythm." Back at the penthouse, Alex went straight to the bar and asked if Julian wanted a drink. This was unusual for them. Julian sat on the sofa as Alex poured 2 glasses of red wine. Alex handed one to him, his expression gentle and earnest. He said that seeing Phoebe had made him realize something. He envied Julian for having a mother like her. He wanted to be part of that. He wanted to be family. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar, borrowing from the deep well of emotion he'd channeled for his most difficult roles. Julian looked surprised but pleased. Alex nodded, then smoothly transitioned. But before we become family, shouldn't we get to know each other completely? He claimed that while Julian knew him, he didn't really know Julian. He asked about Julian's ex-boyfriends, wanting to see how he measured up. Julian paused, then said there were no memorable relationships. Alex pressed, asking for photos. Julian deflected, asking if Alex kept photos of Jason. When Alex said he could find them online, Julian countered that his exes weren't public figures. He was a fortress. Julian tried to change the subject by putting on the latest episode of their show. But Alex steered the conversation back, asking what Julian's first impression of Chris had been. Julian claimed Chris just wasn't his type, and that he had been annoyed that Alex tried to set him up with someone else when he had already started falling for him. He laid it on thick, speaking of Alex as a hidden gem he wanted all to himself. "You decided to be a bottom for love, is that it?" Alex asked, setting the final trap. Julian didn't miss a beat. "No, I decided I wouldn't mind being the top for love if you got tired." The acting, the quick thinking, it was masterful. Alex downed his wine, stood up, and pinned Julian against the arm of the sofa. "You know," he whispered, his lips brushing Julian's ear, "the moment I saw you in that tuxedo, I had ideas." His gaze was smoldering. "I wanted you to wear it while you were inside me. It's a shame you're a bottom with no experience." Julian's throat went dry. The words "I'm actually a top" were on the tip of his tongue, but he held them back. He couldn't rush it. He had to stick to the plan. He managed to say they could figure it out together. His hands found their way to Alex's hips. Alex sneered internally but kept his expression soft, asking how they would figure it out. Julian, feigning a great sacrifice, offered to be the one to work on him that night. Alex sat up, a cool look on his face as he glanced down at the growing bulge in Julian's trousers. "You're a treasure," he said softly. "I wouldn't want you to strain yourself." He stood, unbuttoning his own shirt. "I believe that being on top or bottom isn't the issue, as long as you tell me clearly that you want to be the top." With that, he turned and walked into the guest bathroom, leaving Julian alone in the living room, a storm of confusion and desire brewing inside him. The next day, a Sunday, Phoebe was coming for lunch. The sound of furious chopping from the kitchen woke Julian. He stumbled out, wrapping his arms around Alex from behind, and asked if he was mincing pork. "Chilies," Alex replied, then raised the cleaver high and brought it down with a sickening thud, splitting a large fish head in two. The bloody head stared up from the cutting board. Julian recoiled, asking if the menu was going to be so violent. Alex smiled sweetly over his shoulder, saying Phoebe had requested spicy food and Julian would just have to endure it. After Julian left the kitchen, Alex added another handful of ghost peppers to the mix. At lunch, every dish was a fiery shade of crimson. Julian stared at the table, his chopsticks hovering uselessly. He asked why it was so spicy. Alex calmly placed a piece of chicken in his bowl, saying it was prepared to Phoebe's taste. Phoebe, already digging in with gusto, added that as the guest, her preference took precedence. Julian, defeated, got a glass of water to rinse his food and a can of cola to douse the flames. The atmosphere was deceptively pleasant. Phoebe mentioned how Julian had denied liking Alex before, and now here they were. Alex laughed, saying Julian was full of secrets. He said he would let me be the top, but he was really plotting something else. Julian froze, a piece of chili-coated fish halfway to his mouth. He glanced at Alex, whose expression was perfectly normal. "It's fine," Alex continued smoothly to Phoebe. I was always a bottom anyway, and he's a top, so there's no conflict. Julian choked on his Coke. He felt like he'd been teleported to a parallel universe where he had already confessed everything and Alex had accepted it. But looking at the mountain of chilies in his bowl, he knew one thing for sure: he was doomed. After Phoebe left, the warm atmosphere evaporated. Julian followed a silent Alex into the kitchen, asking what his mother had said. "Nothing much," Alex replied, loading the dishwasher. "I just told her you said you were a top," and she didn't seem surprised. He leaned against the counter, a smirk on his face. "So you know how to use a dishwasher? I thought princes were useless." Julian quietly promised to do the dishes from now on. Alex just took a cigarette and went to the balcony. Julian followed him out, asking how he found out. Alex took a drag, his eyes cold. "I should be asking you, what was the point of pretending to be a bottom?" Julian earnestly claimed he had warned Alex to be careful, that Alex had been the one to assume things. Alex scoffed, reminding him of New Year's Eve. Julian's excuse was that he'd been afraid of losing Alex, the only friend he had in the city. The sincerity in his deep, dark eyes was almost convincing. For a moment, Alex remembered his earlier thought: only a saint could be cruel to Julian. Well, today he was aiming for sainthood. He asked if Julian honestly thought that excuse would work after he'd been parading around in his underwear for months. Julian had the audacity to ask if he wanted the truth or a lie. The truth, he admitted, was that he had enjoyed the view very much. He even claimed he had a conscience, reminding Alex that he'd repeatedly told him not to wear the white underwear. "I tried to be honest," Julian insisted. "I told you I could be the husband." Alex was exasperated. "I thought you meant you'd be the top for love," Julian asked with perfect seriousness, if the end result wasn't the same. Finally, he apologized, admitting it started as a game that he couldn't stop. The apology felt hollow. Alex asked if Julian just thought he was a pushover. Julian, looking genuinely distressed, asked what he could do to earn his forgiveness. "I could go down on you," he offered. Alex's hand twitched. "Or you could tie me to the bed. Blindfolds, whips, whatever you want." The path to sainthood suddenly seemed less appealing. But Alex pushed the demonic thoughts away. Those weren't punishments. Julian would enjoy them just as much. He crushed his cigarette in the ashtray. "I'm telling you right now, Julian, if I ever let you into my bed again, I'll take your last name." Julian's eyes lit up with a thoughtful gleam. "So when we're in bed, you'll call me Daddy?" For the next 2 hours, Alex was a silent storm of cleaning, and Julian's attempts to talk were met with icy glares. Finally, Alex announced he was going out for drinks with Chris. Julian insisted on coming, offering to pay. At the dimly lit speakeasy, the tension between them was thick enough to cut with a knife. Chris, sensing the drama, immediately poked fun at Julian, saying, "So you really did think he was a bottom?" When Alex went to the restroom, Chris leaned in, asking Julian what was going on. Julian was tight-lipped. Chris grinned. "Well, if you're not together, I might as well make a move." He ordered an obscenely expensive bottle of brandy to annoy Julian, but Julian simply told the waiter to bring 2 more for Alex to take home. Then, he leaned close to Chris and offered him the next Aurelian brand deal in exchange for putting in a good word. Chris's allegiance shifted instantly. When Alex returned, Chris was singing Julian's praises, and Julian was laying on the compliments about Alex's talent and star potential. Alex cut them off, asking if they were performing a comedy routine for him. He stood to leave, tired of the games. In the parking lot, as Alex waited for his ride, Julian caught up to him. He grabbed Alex's wrist, spun him around, and pressed him against the cool concrete wall. His mouth crashed down on Alex's, A kiss that was less about tenderness and more about desperate, frantic possession. It was different now, knowing the truth. The raw dominance was undeniable. A distant footstep broke the spell, and Julian pulled back, his mood visibly improved. He knew the way out of the parking garage now. Alex was left behind, flustered and annoyed, his carefully constructed anger beginning to crumble. The next morning, Alex was up early for his first rehearsal for the corner bar. To his surprise, Julian was already awake, attempting to make sandwiches in the kitchen. The counter was a disaster zone, but Julian himself, shirtless in the morning sun, looked ethereal. Alex told him not to bother cooking if he didn't know how. Julian insisted on trying, offering Alex a slightly misshapen sandwich. Alex took it without meeting his eyes, stating that cheap attempts to please him were meaningless. He then pulled out a piece of paper. "If you're serious, we're renegotiating this." He pointed to the old rules on the fridge. The new contract was simple. Julian would defer to Alex in all matters, professional and otherwise. Any disagreements would be settled by rock, paper, scissors. Julian protested that it was a treaty of surrender, but ultimately agreed, writing out the new terms. When they pressed their thumbprints onto the paper, Julian angled it just so, creating a small, red heart from their prints. The first performance was a success. Alex, playing the weaselly informant Eddie, was killed off by the end of his scene. Backstage, he felt the familiar post-show adrenaline. After taking off his costume makeup, he headed for the exit. He was surprised to find his ex-boyfriend, Jason, waiting for him. Jason said he was in town for work and had come to see the show. He tried to explain himself, claiming his rival Liam had set him up, and asked Alex to dinner. Alex wasn't interested. Just as he was trying to brush him off, a hand grabbed his wrist. It was Julian, holding a bouquet of flowers, his expression thunderous. "He's busy," Julian said to Jason, his voice dripping with ice. "Find someone else to bother." Jason, outnumbered, made a graceful retreat. Julian turned to Alex, demanding to know why Jason was there. Alex shrugged, saying the man was probably delusional. This answer did not satisfy Julian, who was furious that Jason had managed to find the backstage entrance, a feat the directionally challenged Julian had failed to accomplish. As they argued, walking through the empty theater parking lot, Alex complained that Julian's temper was making it feel like Alex was the one doing the pursuing. Julian stopped, pulled him close, and kissed him again, deep and possessive, right there under the open sky. Someone, somewhere in the distance, snapped a photo. Back at the hotel, they saw the picture online. It was blurry, but unmistakable. The internet exploded. While Alex panicked about how to deny it, Julian calmly opened his own social media. He found a comment asking, "Is this you and Alex?" and replied with a single, definitive word, "Yes." Alex felt like he was going to have a stroke. "I don't want to be trending anymore," he yelled, throwing his phone onto the bed. Julian just looked at him calmly. It was bound to happen eventually. The next day, as the online world was still reeling from the kiss, Julian posted again. It was a picture of his arm, freshly tattooed with the elegant, intertwined letters, A and K. The caption read, "I'm serious about this pursuit." Alex saw it and dropped his head into his hands. He was dealing with an entirely new level of crazy.